and I guess we can all agree that it isn't always that simple. Just in questions, hopefully at the end, I have a little bit too many slides, so we'll be going somewhat quick through these slides. So hopefully I can get my point across. So this is me. My name is Thomas Sandsør. I also go by the name of the CRM Keeper in social media. I have been in the Dynamics business since 2007, so more than 13 years now. So I would say I'm a veteran within Dynamics, but I am absolutely a rookie within field service. So far, I've only done a few cases, and my views on field service so far are probably based on the experiences I've had as of right now. So, if you lived in Norway instead of the United States, you would pay 67% less for childcare. You would pay 26% more for entertainment. Beer in Norway is quite expensive. And you would pay 41% more for restaurants. You would also be 36% less likely to be obese. And you would spend 43% less on healthcare. And you would live, hopefully, 1.9 years longer. So these are numbers from Google, so we have to trust them as much as we can trust Google, right? But the point is, why am I comparing? Well, USA is 30 times larger than Norway in mass. I come from Norway, if that wasn't clear. And then could I try to make a field service solution 30 times simpler? Because what I was seeing is that I didn't really have the same needs as all of the amazing presentations that I see sometimes with visions. So why do I focus on simplicity? Well, because someone once told me that what I am doing is working with low-value workers. And that may be true. And I would love to be talking about, products becoming services, IoT, etc., and optimization of services, everything like that. But the truth of the matter is that the cases I've been involved in so far are more on the left side of this model. I'm more working with people that still consider the agents as cost centers. So in order to get them to a profit center, and then potentially in the future, which someone might call this servitization with futuristic view, I would say that I actually have to move them from a cost center to profit center. But that means I have to realize that I'm still stuck in a cost center scenario. So I got to make things as simple as possible. And unfortunately, I also have to focus on the price of the cost of everything that I do. What is the bare minimum you would need of a field service solution? Well, you would need a schedule board. You need resources. You need a work order. You would definitely need a mobile app, or you would most likely need a mobile app. And goes without saying, in my cases, an ERP integration. The cases I have done would have made no sense without the ERP integration. I mean, in my experience so far, I could not stress this enough. Do not start the field service implementation if you haven't planned something of an ERP integration. So what I'm going to jump right into now is the business case. So the company that I've been delivering for in this business case, they deliver meeting room solutions, everything from Cisco to Teams to anything you can really think of. And, the screens, the painting, every single thing, even electricians, everything. So they have a sales team, a project team, they have an installation team, and a customer service team. So they have 4 different user scenarios. And what we see the picture of here is them actually mounting a meeting room right before the summer. Let's meet the team. So for sales, we have Susan. Susan is a great salesperson. For project management, we have Karen. Karen is Karen. And for the field service agent, we have George. And for customer service, we have Bob. So these are the 4 user personas we are going to be looking at throughout the presentation. And these are not the actual names, of course, but these are 4 roles that the customer has. So if we look at the sales process they were using is pretty standard. They have, the initial calls, the initial meetings, and at some point, the opportunity will gain value. And you start entering the values of the opportunity, and eventually, in the document part here, you would have a signed contract, or maybe even lots of pictures from the first sightings of the meeting rooms, or etc. And eventually, then at the end, you have the handover for the project. So for project management, this is where Karen comes in. She starts out by reading all of the documents. So by reading the documents first, she gets an overview of what has to be done. Then she goes over to the ERP system and creates a project. And this is not Dynamics projects. This is a project dimension for billing. So there's nothing magic here. But the magic does come when, you know, the project managers are doing their job, finding the correct resources, making sure that everyone knows what they're going to do and when we start up. And then it gets handed over to a field service technician that will have a work order, and she will book resources and do the scheduling. So what's different here is that I'm not using a dispatcher as an exclusive role, but the project manager is actually also the dispatcher. So for the field service agent, this is George. He gets onto his scooter, he works, drives over to the customer. He will then have his work order. He will then look through the documents about what he's going to do and what has been described earlier in the sales process. And he will then he will then add his hours to the work order. Then back to the project again, magic will happen, and eventually we end up in the ERP invoice that it will be sent to the ERP system. And so the last part here is then the customer service representative called Bob. So Bob has a typical, you know, email to case scenario, but in this case, he will be looking at when the email comes in. We are going to create a case, but I'm going to do a little twist onto this, and I'll show you soon. But again, this will also potentially create a work order if it's something that first line support can't solve. And then again, booking a resource or finding a resource, booking the resource actually entering the hours, billable hours, and then Bob going back to invoicing the potential case. In this case, again, Bob would be the dispatcher. So we have different roles, different dispatchers, but we're trying to stick to the same user view. So let's jump into the pictures from the customer here. Oh, sorry, we have a few little. If you are a consultant right now, you're probably thinking, what entities are we going to be using? So we have typically, then you would say account, contact, opportunity, project, case, and work order. Well, I was trying to think of, well, can I simplify this? Because that's a lot of navigation for some users. And I just had to see what the customer was capable of doing. And what if I said that the project is so simple that I could just as well expand it from the opportunity? And what if I said that, well, does it really have to be a difference from case and work order? Can't they actually be the same thing? So what I did was I removed projects. It was going to be a custom entity anyway. And I ignored case and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to combine these. And so we ended up with the account, contact, opportunity that is also a project, and a work order that is also a case. We're going to see later on if this makes sense or not. So let's look at Susan here. So Susan starts off her job with working on an opportunity. As you can see, this is a standard opportunity with or not a standard, but this is opportunity in Dynamics 365 for sales. And we have the process bar on top, which you can see here that she has a project handover at a certain points. But what she will be doing is working with the opportunity. At some point, we can also see in the bottom here, the estimated hours technician. So at an early stage, she's saying that this project is going to be 250 hours. And this is something that that we also do in BI to sort of forecast what are we going to need of the resources, in the future, based on also the delivery date. And so for delivery address, she might be already figuring out that it is actually not the company's main address that we are going to be delivering to, but it could be a different address. So that's what's also stuff that the salesperson is looking through. Teams and resources. So typically within sales, customer service, marketing, I think we always have different contact people for different roles. So sales will start off by entering the contact people she can find at her stage in this opportunity. But this could be typically maybe the janitor or the electrician and the people signing the agreements. And so this is also a very important thing. I mean, the standard document integration with SharePoint. So at some point in time, she will have a signed document from the customer with the agreements, and she might have some images that she's taking on site. And she stores all of this information in the Documents tab of the opportunity. And so when Susan is done and she has gotten her signed agreement, she has a handover to Karen. And so this is where Karen now starts off by, as you can see, Karen is now working in her project, but the project is, as you can see on top here, it's the opportunity. So, but it is out of sight, out of mind for the salespeople based on the views, but Karen is now just working in the same entity and the same record. So she will then continue working on the same documents and reading the same documents, and she will continue to add on to the teams and resources that we might need to have a contact information for. And eventually she will create the project, and this is just the ERP financial dimension. It's just a button we click. We send a message down to a ERP system called 24/7 Office. It's an online ERP system. It generates a project number, the 184044. And we receive this back into the opportunity. So as you can see on the bottom left, we have the project ID, the 184044. We have job description, order information. And at this type, she will say that this work order type is the installation. We also have customer service, but that's later. So at this point, she's actually just taking the opportunity. We're still in the opportunity entity. We have two different roles working here. At this point, she is ready now to convert this to a work order. So I have a flow. I will not be going through that in details right now. That copies a lot of the information from opportunity to work order. That isn't included in the out-of-the-box copy function. But what you can see here is in the work order that we now created, we have the project ID, we have the job description, and and we have the estimates. If you remember the 250 hours that we wrote, so if you can see here in the bar, I have products, hours, and estimates. So estimate, as you can see, is the work order service task. So the 250 hours divided by 24 equals 10.42 days. So this is, again, the standard way of Microsoft displaying the days here, but it is actually stored as a 250 in the background. So the number is correct. The hours here, just to point out, the hours here are work order services, and these are work order products. And so for the team of resources, again here, we are just copying over the same teams and resources used in opportunity, and we can add on to more teams and resources. The address is out-of-the-box address. I'm just copying the address information from the opportunity. And again here, this is where it gets interesting because I added the copy function for the document location in opportunity. So this is the exact same document location. I was lucky because this customer has I mean, they're very transparent. They want to share absolutely everything. So the initial documents that the salesperson started with, this is the same document location. If I do a change here and I will navigate back to the opportunity, it's the same document location, the same changes are made. So and you won't get confused here by navigating from opportunity to work order and trying to figure out what documents did I store where. It's just one document location. The next step for Karen is to book a resource. And of course, you can do a drag and drop here, but as you can see on duration, that's 250 hours. So that's going to be booking up most of my schedule. So if I then do the find availability, this is just standard out of the box. And I'm going to say that from the Monday the 3rd, I wanted 16 hours, meaning that I want 2 days from Thomas as a resource. And you see here that Thomas as a resource now has the 2 days booked. Also, you will be able to see on the work order that out of the 250 hours, I now have 16 hours fulfilled and a remaining duration of 234. And so the 234 hours could then be used maybe for Thomas, but it could also be used for teams of other resources that I want to book in, or maybe the electrician, maybe the plumber, etc. So different things that need to be booked in. So we have a total here as a project estimate. And so what happens next? Well, this is George. So George is the field service technician, the agent. Well, the template out of the box, I did a few tweaks here too, because the template out of the box for field service is very, what can you say? It's very highly configured. So it has a lot of dependencies, and with the second you try to touch something, many other things break. So I had to rebuild a lot of things here. But this is the first view the field service agent will see. It has the 2 bookings that I made for Monday and Tuesday, and this is a bookable resource booking. That's all it is. It's a view of the bookable resource booking. And right now they are red because they have not been started or completed. So he opens the Monday, and as you can see here, this is pretty much out of the box field service. At this time, still using Resco. But what you will see here is the main points, the cloud documents here. They are the same documents that we started off with from the opportunity stage to give George the best possible chances to succeed in anything here, because he can see every dialogue that's been made throughout the whole field service thing. So what he will be doing here in this work order is that he will be firstly adding his hours. So this day, he's going to add 8 hours working on installing the screen. And he can also open the documents. In this case, he's just going to open a picture take and probably displaying the location. And so I hope this is okay, but this is from the Forward Forever about the business name change of Dataflex, and it's changed again, so let's not focus on that. But anyway, it was the best picture I had at the moment. And the point is that he has everything, all the information available that he needs. He also has a context down in the bottom right. So we have then what he has added in this case. He's added parking for product. So the product is the typically items that you would add for, it could be an HDMI cable, or in this case, parking. And he's also added his hours. So a total of 10 hours here with 2 overtime and 8 normal hours. And he took also a picture, the typical standard out of the box, just taking a picture of the completed delivery. The last thing he does then, he goes in, he does the booking status, and he says, I completed this work order. And then it turns green in his calendar. And the reason we're using these visual aids is because I need him to make sure that I always do these bookings, because we're not using, in the simplification here, we're not using the arrival on time, etc. So we're not using all of that complex matrix for this. We're just using really simple, we have a task, and we've started the task, and we completed the task. And of course, that will then update the schedule board. Sorry about that. The schedule board with the status. But George isn't finished, because one thing that we have to do here is also make sure that George bills his hours. So for this this company, they had, their technicians have to do 37.5 hours a week. And the visual aid here is saying that, well, for Monday, you have done your job, you've booked your 8 hours plus 2 hours overtime. But for Tuesday, you have a gap. You haven't billed any hours. What were you doing this Tuesday morning? And so this is just the visual aids I'm doing here. So he would then click directly into the calendar, and he would then add into whatever he was doing. So they would become billable hours. The same way that we as functional consultants, or sorry, the consultants on this call, would do for any week of the day when we're in the day of the week, sorry, when we are billing our hours. So the only thing I'm missing here is the total sum of hours per day and per week, a view that I haven't really been able to make as of right now, so that I can easily see that I have the number of hours I need for this week. So back again, George hands this over to Karen, and now Karen is also working not only as a dispatcher, but she's also working as a project manager, and she's going to be completing this work order on the back end side of it. So as you can see here, I just did a little thing just showing what completed bookings we have on the work order, and we have billable hours on the top right-hand corner, which is 10 hours based on what George did. And so the thing is that I want to point out is the reason why it's important here for the 10 hours so far, and what Karen is going to do is because it's a 250-hour estimate. So that's going to be, from January to February to March, maybe. So it's going to be a long project. But we don't want to bill once the project is done, because normally you would be clicking the system status and saying when it's closed posted, that's when you create an invoice. Well, the problem is that I want to bill every month at the end of every month. So what Karen does is she then goes through the work order. She looks at the products first, sees that there's parking here, fine. Then she will look at the hours. In this case, you will then move the hours from not synced, which is the status they are in initially, and we will move them over to ready to sync. When they are ready to sync, that means that we now have hours and products potentially that we can send to the ERP system. So by sending these, we will then be able to then click create order. And again, this is a very simple integration. We're doing one-way integrations here, not two ways or forwards and backwards. This is just pushing to the ERP system, and I'm looping through finding all of the hours and all the products that have been marked as ready to sync. So that will create the invoice or the order in the ERP system. And as you can see here, we have our two different types of hours, the regular technician and the technician with the 50-hour extra. And so we don't store any price information in Dynamics. And the reason for that is because that can be very complex. And the ERP systems are very good at it. So I'm just saying that it's an hour of the type 27 and so many hours of type this number. So therefore, the price matrix and all the logic for pricing per customer, per project potentially, and even per resource at some point would then be stored in ERP and not be stored in CRM. So what about Bob? So Bob, as you can remember, he has the email to case scenario. And in this case, I would say, okay, so normally you would have an email coming in, you have a case created. If the case can't be solved by Bob, he would have to escalate it by converting it to a work order and then, doing the regular work order process. So I decided, well, why don't we just try and skip that and we do work order directly? So if you're not familiar with this screen, this is the typical email to case when you get an email in a support queue and you create a record based on this. And so in this case, I'm going directly over and creating a work order and not the case. And the reason for doing that is because I saw that there was a lot better collaborative effort when they were working on the same level and not having two different entities navigating between each other. So the only difference that I really had to make was just to create a new view for Bob. And then that's the active work orders for service and not installation. So what Bob does is he works on the work order the same way that any other work order would be. But at some point in time, he might say that this support status is second line support because he can't solve it. So what happens then is that the same work order and the same process, everything the same, then turns up to George, because George can also do the service agreements and he can do the installations. I mean, he's just interested in doing work. So at this point, Bob is then the administrator of the work order, and he will, process everything. He will actually be the dispatcher in this case. He will just get a hold of George as a resource. George will do the exact same things that he's been doing in his field service application. And when he is done, it will go back as a handover to Bob, and Bob will then go through the exact same process that we had earlier, where he looks at the hours, he looks at the products. If this is billable, based on the agreement that the customer has, if it is billable hours, he will then just click the create invoice, and we're back to the exact same process. So what I have shown you here today, and probably spoken just a little bit too quickly, and I apologize for that, but the power of 4. So I have 4 different personas: sales, project management, field service agent, and customer service. And they're all represented in 4 major entities. We have the account, contacts, the opportunity and project working in one, and the work order and case really working in one. And I mean, this is not this probably won't work for everyone, but it certainly has worked for a few of the customers that I've been working with here in Norway. And this is kind of the need I've been seeing, that in my cases, and I can only speak for my own cases, is that the simplicity here worked really well, and we're really just utilizing the best things from the scheduling engine and the work order and RESTful, of course. So yeah, this was a really speedy, quick walkthrough of my presentation. So I guess I have not been looking at the chat, but that's it for me right now. I actually made it with 5 minutes to spare, so I guess that's okay.
Pretty
So
awesome. Pretty awesome.
thanks.
Thanks, Thomas. We do have a couple of questions here. So